we are not here to slam 100% of the University of Miami fan base or any other fan base for that matter, because what's happening in Coral Gables is very endemic to what's happening in a lot of programs, but not to this level. There is a lunatic fringe who covers and who roots for the University of Miami, and it blows up on social media, and it's destructive. It is hateful. It is dance on the grave of Manny Diaz because you suck, you've destroyed us, we can't wait for you to get out. While the guy is still sitting there, look, he never stole a freight train last time I checked, but he's still trying to do a job, and he's having to do it under these conditions. The social media aspect of what is Miami is destructive to where it is harming everybody. Do you really think athletic directors, coaches, people who want to come here to work don't see this? Do they really want to come to a place where the fans are threatening the coaches, threatening the players, calling out the recruits, naming their mother and father, sending out addresses and phone numbers? Do they really want to be a part of that? That's part of the culture here, Joe. And people will say, Ed, you and Joe are way off the beam here. Look, that happens everywhere. This happens at every college. No, it doesn't. And you can speak to that, Joe, because we've talked about it before. What's happening at Miami is a culture issue. There's a fan issue here, and that's got to be cleaned up as well.
Oh, no question. I mean, and for people who say it happens everywhere, let's say you're right. Why do you want to be lumped into that? Why do you want to be like everybody else? Wouldn't it make sense? Wouldn't it make your school more appealing if you were not like everybody else? So yeah, I mean, it has hurt them in the past. I don't know if it's going to hurt them in this search or not because I'm not involved in this search. But I could tell you point blank, the last two times they looked for athletic directors, there were guys that stepped away from the job because they were not interested in dealing with that nonsense. And, you know, that's going to have to get cleaned up because if it doesn't, it's going to weigh down the next coach. It doesn't matter who you hire. You know, they could hire Lane Kiffin tomorrow and everybody will go crazy. We got the Lane train. It's going to be wonderful until he loses a game.
Exactly.
Then they're going to go crazy. And all of that can be fan behavior. Where it crosses the line is when players' families in the stands and fans start mothering them and start cursing at them. When families write to the university and say, you know, I bring my kids to the game and the vulgarity and the drunkenness and the nastiness, I can't take my kids to the game anymore. That's where it impacts. That's where it's got to get cleaned up. Having some dipshit on the internet write a bunch of crap, that's minor.
Minimal.
In comparison to the stuff that goes on in the stands that has to get cleaned up because people aren't going to go to the games.
Well, it's all part of it. I mean, what we're talking about, you're right.
It's all, and that's
you can
all,
avoid the social media. You
of
cannot read it. You can walk away from the tweets and all the Facebook posts.
Right.
But it leaves a mark with people, and it creates and helps to foment this disgusting, despicable nature of hate against college athletes and people who are just trying to earn a job. I mean, that's the worst part of it. And you're right. Look, I've been to games before at the Swamp in Gainesville. I've been at Doak Campbell Stadium. I've been at the Big House. I've been at a lot of places. Boston College, I was at a lot of different places. UCLA. I have never in my career, Joe, witnessed the kind of vile behavior that goes on at a University of Miami game. It happened at the Orange Bowl, and it's worse now where it is right now. The school's got to do something about this. Look, if you want to take away tickets, do something. Screw the social media, but you got to clean these clowns out of there because it is going to hurt you, not just in the AD and the head coach, Joe, but it's going to hurt you in recruiting as well. Why do I, as a parent, want to send my kid there? I don't. Guess what? FAU is right up the street. FIU is down the street. USF and UCF are up there as well, and they're looking for my kid. I can get a better education. I don't have to worry about him or her being called a jackass by a moron in the stands.
Well, it just makes a hard job more difficult. Look.
Yes.
The whole concept of the late Howard Schnellenberger's recruiting philosophy of the state of Miami, that's over forever. And it's over forever because life has changed. Students down here now want to go out of state to school. Not just athletes, but even non-athletes. The out of state, kids want to have a different experience. They want to have a different college experience. They want to have a different lifestyle experience. So you're never going to get a 24-person recruiting class and 18 of them are going to be from Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County anymore. Those days are done. The idea is to get the right kids, and then when you get them, develop them and make the experience so good that they tell their friends who are underclassmen, you got to come here. See, what gets lost in everybody talking about the legacy of Miami and all this stuff is that, you know why it was effective in the 80s and 90s? Is because those kids had great experiences.
Yes.
And those experiences got sold to underclassmen and their friends and their parents. In the 2000s, these kids don't have a great experience. So they're not selling it, and their parents aren't selling it to their friends and the underclassmen and all of that. All of that has to change. Whether you win 6 games a year or 11 games a year, you should be able to have a good experience. When you don't have it, it has really harmful effects all the way down the line, because now parents say, hey, look, my kid went there for 4 years and it sucked. We had to sit in the
Right.
stands and deal with drunks. We had to go home and have my daughter crying because she read crap on social media
And this
about her
happens.
brother.
Come on, people,
And
be honest. Joe and I are
this
telling you
is the
things that happens.
stuff. This is the stuff that has to get cleaned up. You have strong people in areas of leadership, it gets cleaned up. You don't, it doesn't, and it festers. All of it has to get cleaned up. That's why the athletic director that takes over this job has got a big job ahead of him. And doesn't mean it can't be done. It's been done at other places. It just has to get done. And that's all part of what it's going to take the new AD to bring the university's athletic department and athletic programs back up to where they were.
And I think what people are missing, what the real fans are missing, what the nut job fans are missing, what a lot of the media is missing as well, the nightmare, the disaster, the dumpster fire that has been the University of Miami for several years is being used against them by other athletic directors, by other coaches, by big recruiters, by high school coaches as well. It has filtered down to that point where you have even high school coaches who will be telling their kids, you don't want to go to Miami. You don't need to be part of that. Matter of fact, I'm going to send you someplace else. And there's competing athletic directors who are out there, Joe, saying, we don't want to be like Miami. It's like, you stepped in Miami. it's the way it's gone right now. Joe, I don't think people realize the negative effects that this university has pushed forward and how other universities around the country are using this now as an example of everything not to do.
Well, you have a show with Larry Bluestein. Nobody's closer to high school football down here than Larry. Ask Larry about,
We've
Miami
talked about it.
recruiting and the challenges of it. It's a huge challenge. And, like I said, it doesn't mean you can't fix it. One thing in sports is
Sure.
the one common denominator in sports is change. And you can change things, but it's going to take a big effort. It's going to take people being really aggressive on the front end. If you act out at a game, you're losing your tickets. I don't give a shit if you've donated $1 million to the university or $100. You're out.
Gone.
And fan behavior is a problem across sports, college and pro around the country. You look at attendance figures in the major sports, they're all on the decline. It isn't just pandemic related. When these teams and programs send surveys out, one of the things that comes back in large numbers is we don't enjoy the stadium experience because we're tired of dealing with drunks and vulgarity and garbage. I can't take my kids to the game. I can't do that. And so this is something that at the professional level and the college level, it's a huge problem.
True.
So, they're going to have to address it here. Like I said earlier, there is a Raider fan-like segment of this fan
And that's
base.
not a compliment.
No, and what's happened is they have the same lack of success the Raiders have had all these years. And on top of everything else, it's no longer a tough venue to play, like Oakland was.
Right.
When the Raider fans were just crazy instead of nasty and crazy, Oakland used to be a tough place to play. Same as the Orange Bowl, it once won 58 straight games. Used to be a tough place to play. These places aren't tough places to play anymore because just being nasty isn't going to carry the day. So nobody. So what it does is it ends up hurting you because you lose your fans. And what ends up happening is all those tickets are on secondary ticket markets, and guess who buys them? The road team.
Opposing fans.
Let's
Yeah.
have a weekend in Miami. Wouldn't that be fun? Coming down from Michigan. No problem. You get a game of Michigan State. It's 50,000 people in the stands. 30,000 of them are from Michigan.
And I can get
Have
a
a nice
$20
day.
ticket because it's not that expensive. There's not enough people that
That's
go.
right.
Look,
I'll
we're
make a
not,
great weekend of it.
we need to make sure that we are not hammering every single fan of Miami or
No.
any other program. We are not doing that. But we are calling out the lunatic fringe. And that's part of the problem. People, lay back a little. Come on. You don't have to hammer away at Manny Diaz and his family, as I've seen and heard on social media. You don't have to have an audio podcast out there where you're basically excoriating Diaz and his assistants. You don't have to have a video show out there put together in mommy's basement where you're out there talking about how bad things are and how the players suck. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. Back the hell off, for crying out loud. You're not helping.
Look,
You're not
Manny
helping.
Diaz. Look, the reality of Manny Diaz is he's not a good head football coach.
No.
He shouldn't have gotten this job unless he, was somewhere else to learn the chops.
Correct.
But the guy didn't do anything illegal here. The guy's carried himself like a gentleman. His kids are still playing hard for him. You may not like the results. Those kids are still playing hard, which means that he didn't lose the locker room. He's just at this stage of his head coaching career, not the guy for this job. So let him go out in the next 2 weeks and play his games and end the season and move on. You don't have to rip him every day. I mean, I felt bad for him the other day having to stand before the media and having to answer Blake James questions because that's above his pay grade. Blake James lost his job not because of Manny Diaz. That may have been a part of it in terms of the hire, but Blake James's problems as athletic director were much larger than Manny Diaz. If it was just making a bad football hire, guess what? You would have had the opportunity to make another hire because every athletic director worth his salt has hired the wrong guy. It happens. His problems were deeper, but to have the head football coach, in essence, being the spokesperson for the entire university, that's a bad position to put him in.
And part
especially
of that,
when his job is tenuous. I mean, what's he supposed to say?
exactly. Really? And part of it is what you have now as a press corps at any college, at Miami or any place else, has now been polluted by a number of people who are there who have zero concept of how to actually report. They are there as bloggers. They are there as agents provocateurs. They are there as people to stick the needle in somewhere and basically get a reaction. They don't know the game. And yeah, you can go ahead and say that we're a bunch of old farts sitting here talking about the old days. No, that used to be how you covered a team. How you don't drag all this other nonsense into it. You ask one question, you walk away. But they got to drill them because they're waiting for that reaction that can go up on my podcast, go up on my YouTube channel, that I can tweet out here, that I can talk about having exclusivity to, which is just nonsense. That's part of the problem, Joe. Bring the temperature down a little bit. We can sit here and we can get angry about it, and we can sit here and pontificate about it. But at the end of the day, you and I are not sitting here calling guys names and screeching at them, except, of course, we're calling them the lunatic fringe of the fan base, which they've earned. So I'll take that one.
Look, the simple adage is the difference between reporting 25 years ago and reporting today is that 25 years ago, anything that any writer were to say to a coach, he was going to say to his face.
Yes.
He was not going to say it behind his back. 25 years later, none of these people will say the things they say online to a coach or a player to their face.
Nope.
Never. It just won't happen. You do have, in college sports more than pros, the fan element of these websites that get their credentials and all of that stuff that make it a little more difficult. But at the end of the day, Ed, it's still about being a pro. and you're going to go there and you're going to act professionally, and you go and you do your job. I mean, like I said, I feel bad for Manny Diaz because he's dead man walking. He knows he's done in 2 weeks. Everybody knows he's done in 2 weeks. And oh, by the way, he's got 2 more weeks of football to coach. And he's got to get kids ready to play, and he's got to get them to care. And then he's got to try to keep the younger players around that they don't go into the transfer portal. Because above all else, Manny's a guy that still loves University of Miami. It's not like he hates it. He's not failing because he wants to fail.
Exactly.
And so it's just the whole thing is that uncomfortable period where everybody knows it's over, but it's not over yet. And that's always difficult. And in sports, that's always the difficult time. It's the manager having to manage the last 30 games in September when he knows he's not going to have a job at the end of the year and has to answer the same question every day about his job security. It just, it is what it is.
Look,
but it doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable.
I give Manny Diaz a lot of credit. He hasn't come out and said anything. He hasn't spit. He hasn't decided to go ahead and take the front line. When Ed Ogeron at LSU, he basically has said out in front at press conferences, oh, I'm a lame duck. He said that. I'm a lame duck coach. And he's basically not caring because he knows he's out at this. I mean, that's a kind of attitude.
Well, he's got 17 million reasons not
to care. But if you want to go ahead and hammer somebody for helping to destroy a program, go after a guy like Ed Ogeron at LSU. Don't go after a guy like Manny Diaz. He's lost some games. Okay, Manny's going to move on. Maybe he'll be successful someplace else. God, I hope he is. I hope he really is successful someplace else. But you don't need to drop all these hammers on people because, like I said, and like you said, some days you're a hammer, some days you're the nail. Stop making everybody else the nail, for crying out loud, at least for a day.
And stop making the place less attractive
Toxic.
for their replacement. And that's what people who aren't in this business don't understand. They're living in a belief that no matter how bad we act, this job is so great, anyone will take it.
Gone.
And what I come back to is how great was the Alabama job before Nick Saban took it over again? They went through how many coaches for how many years? Gene Stallings won a national championship at Alabama. They ran him off, okay? That was one of the most hateful places to coach. Bill Curry, one of the greatest people you'll ever meet in sports, was successful there. They blew him out. Mike Shula, you can go down the line. Look at all the coaches Alabama churned through before Nick got there. And what changed? It wasn't just winning, but Nick was an outsider. He had no Alabama connections. He wasn't going to put up with the Alabama bullshit. He was going to implement his program. He was given autonomy to do it. And what happened? Built a dynasty.
Yeah, because he
that can happen. That's the template that you're looking at Miami, and you can say, "Well, that'll never happen again." Maybe not.
Maybe
but
not.
Guess what? You want Mario Cristobal? That's where Mario's learned his chops. Okay, it wasn't just playing for Dennis Erickson. It was learning his chops with Nick Saban, seeing how to do the gig the right way.
Yes.
So that's all part of it. And it's like a gumbo. You've got to put all of these things into the pot in order for it to taste good. And, Miami, this is an important time for them. They can't mess up these hires. They can't. They no longer can do it. And if that means they have to tamp down the lunatic fan base, then they got to tamp them down.
Please.
And that's just the way it is.
If they screw this up, they're going to be...
Things are going to work out for them.
If they screw this up, they're going to be irrelevant for another 10 years, maybe another 20. And I've told people...
If they screw this up, they become Vanderbilt.
Well, I've told people the way Miami is being run right now, I don't see them ever competing for a national championship again, maybe not in the next 10 years. Sure, everything changes. I mean, it's cyclical, but they've got to change the culture. And if they don't change the culture, they're DOA.
You hire the right coach, it changes in 2 years.
Everything changes.
2 years ago, LSU was the toast of college football, greatest offense ever, one of the 5 or 6 greatest teams ever, scored almost 50 points against Alabama. Look at what they are. And 2 years from now, They're below 500 teams. So
Yep.
it can change, but you need the right people in place to
You got to
change
make
it.
the right people and you got to pay the right money.